The day my husband left me with our daughter, that was the day I stopped recognizing myself. I stood on the porch, watching his taxi disappear down the street, the suitcase tilted precariously in the back, a symbol of everything unbalanced in our lives. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the soft whimpers of my 1-year-old Lily, who didn't understand why Daddy wasn't coming inside. They thought I would fall apart. They underestimated Zoe. If you believe in a mother's unwavering love, subscribe now. He called it needing space. A month in Europe with his friends, a boys' trip he'd been planning for ages, conveniently timed just as Lily was hitting peak fussiness. He painted it as essential for his mental health, a recharge he desperately required. He stood there with his puppy dog eyes and basically abandoned us. What he didn't mention was the sheer, isolating terror of being utterly alone with a 1-year-old. There were no explosive arguments, no slammed doors, just a quiet, insidious withdrawal, culminating in that final, casual goodbye on the porch, his words laced with promises of "I'll bring you back something nice. And think of this as a mini vacation for you too, just without me." I watched him leave and I felt something inside me harden, a resolve forming amidst the hurt and confusion. The following weeks weren't a vacation. They were a blur of sleepless nights. 3 a.m. cries that clawed at my sanity, desperate trips to Walmart for baby medicine, and the brutal, unforgiving realization of what being solely responsible for another human life truly entailed. Every day was a relentless cycle of feeding, changing, soothing, and cleaning, punctuated by moments of pure, unadulterated joy when Lily would smile or babble, reminding me why I was doing this. Meanwhile, his Instagram feed was a curated highlight reel of smiling faces in front of iconic landmarks, glasses of wine overlooking breathtaking vistas, and carefree adventures in charming European cafes. Each post was a knife twist, a stark reminder of his absence and the carefree life he was living while I was drowning in diapers and exhaustion. He was supposed to be my partner. He was supposed to be here, sharing the burden, the joy, the everything. The bills piled up, work became a distant memory, and the weight of it all threatened to crush me. My parents lived a few states away, unable to offer more than phone support, and my friends, while sympathetic, had their own lives and families to navigate. I felt utterly alone, adrift in a sea of responsibility with no land in sight. I started documenting everything. Every sleepless night, every feverish brow I touched, every missed paycheck, every happy giggle. I knew even then, on some instinctual level, that this wasn't just about a month-long vacation. This was about something deeper, something fundamentally broken. He thought I was weak. He thought I would crumble under the pressure. He misjudged me. I stayed silent. I listened. I learned. I prepared. The person I trusted most was one of them, my supposed best friend Sarah. They had been planning this vacation together for months. Late-night calls, hushed whispers when I entered the room, and inside jokes that suddenly seemed sinister. I caught Sarah subtly defending his actions, minimizing my struggles, suggesting that maybe I was exaggerating the difficulties of motherhood. The realization hit me like a physical blow. She wasn't just a friend, she was an accomplice. They were both in on the charade. This wasn't just about him needing space. It was about them creating space, a space where they could explore whatever twisted connection they shared without my inconvenient presence. While I was struggling to keep my head above water, they were building a sandcastle on the beach, laughing as the tide washed in, oblivious to the wreckage they were leaving behind. The rage began to simmer, a slow burn beneath the surface of my carefully constructed facade. I played the part of the abandoned wife, the struggling mother, the victim. I let them see what they wanted to see, all the while meticulously gathering information, documenting their deceit, and formulating my plan. They thought they had won. They thought they were untouchable. They were wrong. So wrong. The silence in the house was a thick, suffocating blanket. The constant cycle of Lily's needs became an unbearable drumbeat against my skull. Every coo, every cry, every demand felt like an accusation. He was gone, gallivanting through Europe, while I was trapped in a prison of dirty diapers and endless bottles. I tried calling him, hoping to pierce through the carefully constructed facade of his Instagram life. The calls went straight to voicemail. "Hi, this is John, leave a message." His tone was so carefree, so utterly detached from the reality of our situation. I pictured him laughing, drinking wine in some sun-drenched piazza, while I was scrubbing spit up off my shirt at 3 a.m. Each unanswered call chipped away at my hope, hardening the resolve that was slowly solidifying within me. I attempted to explain the situation to my boss, hoping for some understanding, some leniency. Family emergency, I mumbled, avoiding eye contact. I need some time. The response was a curt, unsympathetic. We all have our problems, Zoe. We need you here. They were understanding, but not that understanding. The emails started a week later, polite at first, then increasingly insistent, finally culminating in the dreaded phone call. We've decided to go in another direction. Unemployed, abandoned, alone, the trifecta of despair. The crimson started creeping into my vision. I gripped the phone so hard I thought it would shatter. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to break something, anything, but Lily was sleeping soundly in her crib, oblivious to the storm raging around us. I forced myself to breathe, to calm down, to remember the plan that was slowly taking shape in my mind. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. When Lily finally drifted off, exhausted from the day's demands, my mind would race, replaying every conversation, every slight, every betrayal. I saw their faces in the darkness, John's smug grin, Sarah's saccharine smile, and the rage would bubble up again, threatening to consume me. I started having nightmares, vivid, terrifying scenarios where I was chasing them through endless streets, screaming their names, only to find them dissolving into shadows. I tried to reach out to Sarah to confront her, to understand her motives. Is everything okay? I texted, feigning innocence. You seem distant. Her response was carefully crafted, a masterpiece of manipulation. Just been busy, sweetie, everything's fine. Why, what's wrong? I wanted to scream, to unleash all the pent-up fury, but I held back. Nothing, I typed. Just checking in. Every interaction with her felt like walking through a minefield, each word carefully chosen, each emotion carefully masked. I knew I couldn't trust her, not anymore, but I needed to maintain the charade, to keep her close enough to gather the information I needed. Finances became a terrifying tightrope walk. The savings dwindled with alarming speed. I spent hours online, searching for remote work, for any way to bring in some income while caring for Lily. The rejections piled up, each one a fresh blow to my already battered self-esteem. I considered asking my parents for help, but pride held me back. I didn't want them to see me as a failure, as the woman who couldn't hold her marriage together. The shame was a constant companion, whispering insidious doubts in my ear. You're not good enough, it hissed. You're a terrible mother, you're all alone. I started selling things online, anything of value that I could part with, jewelry, old electronics, even some of my favorite clothes. Each sale felt like a small victory, a temporary reprieve from the crushing weight of debt. But it wasn't enough. The bills continued to mount, the creditors started calling, and the fear grew with each passing day. I was drowning, slowly but surely, and no one seemed to notice. They wanted me broken. They thought they were succeeding. But every setback fueled my determination, every obstacle strengthened my resolve. I would not let them win. I would not let them destroy me. I would fight back with every fiber of my being. The plan was not yet complete, but the pieces were falling into place, one by one. They underestimated the power of a mother's love, the ferocity of a wounded spirit, and the chilling precision of a carefully plotted revenge. I would make them pay. The eviction notice was the final straw. A bright pink piece of paper taped to the front door, proclaiming in stark, impersonal language that we had 3 days to vacate the premises. I stared at it, the words blurring through a haze of exhaustion and despair. 3 days, where were we supposed to go? What were we supposed to do? The weight of it all crashed down on me, suffocating me, crushing the last vestiges of hope. I sank to my knees on the porch, the pink paper clutched in my trembling hand, and wept. Great, shuddering sobs that racked my body, tears streaming down my face, blurring the already distorted world. Lily, sensing my distress, started to cry too, her small, plaintive wails echoing my own despair. I pulled her close, burying my face in her soft hair, trying to find some comfort, some solace in her innocent presence. But it was no use. The darkness had taken hold, and I was drowning in it. That night I sat in the darkened living room, Lily asleep in her crib, staring at the flickering screen of my laptop. The bank account was empty. The credit cards were maxed out. The job applications had all been rejected. There was nowhere to turn. A chilling thought slithered into my mind, a dark whisper promising a way out, a release from the pain and the struggle. The world would be better off without me. Lily would be better off with a real family, a family that could provide for her, that could give her the life she deserved. I started searching online, my fingers trembling as I typed the words into the search engine. The answers were there, readily available, promising a quick and painless exit. The crimson rose to the surface, blurring my vision. I felt myself being pulled towards the abyss, drawn to the seductive promise of oblivion. Then Lily stirred in her crib, a soft whimper breaking through the suffocating silence. I looked at her, her tiny face illuminated by the faint glow of the nightlight, and the darkness receded just a little. I couldn't do it. I couldn't leave her. She was my responsibility, my purpose, my everything. I closed the laptop, the dark thoughts receding, replaced by a surge of fierce, protective love. I would not give up. I would not let them win. I would fight for her, for us. The next morning, I woke up with a newfound sense of clarity. The despair hadn't completely vanished, but it had been tempered by a steely resolve. I knew what I had to do. I had to fight back, but not with tears or recriminations. With cunning, with strategy, with a cold, calculated plan. I started by gathering every piece of evidence I could find. The emails, the text messages, the photos, the bank statements, every detail that documented John's betrayal and Sarah's complicity. I organized it all meticulously, creating a timeline, a narrative of their deceit. I spent hours researching legal options, consulting with pro bono attorneys, learning about my rights. I discovered that John's business trip had been funded with marital assets, money that rightfully belonged to both of us. I found evidence of his affair with Sarah, emails and text messages that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. And then I stumbled upon something even more damning, evidence of financial misconduct, shady deals, and questionable transactions that John had been involved in for years. This wasn't just about a broken marriage. It was about fraud, about deception, about a web of lies that extended far beyond our personal lives. This was their weak spot. This was how I would bring them down. I spent the next few weeks living a double life. To the outside world, I was still the struggling, abandoned wife, barely holding it together. But behind closed doors, I was a woman on a mission, meticulously planning my revenge. I learned how to track IP addresses, how to access deleted files, how to use encryption to protect my communications. I became a digital shadow, moving silently through their online world, gathering information, uncovering secrets. I discovered that Sarah wasn't just a friend. She was John's business partner, involved in his shady dealings, profiting from his deception. She was just as culpable, just as deserving of punishment. I started to understand the depth of their betrayal, the extent of their lies, and the rage within me grew, fueled by a cold, calculating desire for justice. I knew that exposing them would be risky, that it could have serious consequences for me and Lily. But I was no longer afraid. I had nothing left to lose. They had taken everything from me, and now it was time to take it back. The plan was almost complete. The pieces were in place. The countdown had begun. They thought they had won. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The storm was coming, and it was going to bury them both. The pieces were scattered across my kitchen table. Printouts of bank statements, screenshots of illicit emails, maps of shell corporations registered in faraway lands. It looked like a war room, and in a way it was. My war. I needed to find the perfect pressure point, the one place where their carefully constructed facade would crumble, exposing the rot beneath. I considered going to the authorities, but I knew that would be a long, drawn-out process, fraught with legal complexities and potential setbacks. Besides, I wanted them to suffer, to feel the same despair and humiliation that they had inflicted on me. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started by focusing on the financial irregularities, the questionable transactions that John had been involved in. I knew that he had been siphoning money from the company for years, using shell corporations to hide his tracks. I needed to prove it, to provide irrefutable evidence that would stand up to scrutiny. I spent countless hours poring over financial documents, tracing the flow of funds, connecting the dots. It was like unraveling a tangled web, each thread leading to another, more complex layer of deceit. The deeper I dug, the more I uncovered. Offshore accounts, fake invoices, and a network of co-conspirators who were all profiting from John's scheme. I knew that if I could expose this, I could bring him down, not just professionally, but personally as well. The legal repercussions would be devastating, and his reputation would be shattered beyond repair. But it wasn't enough to just expose John. Sarah had been complicit in his crimes, profiting from his deception, and actively working against me. She deserved to suffer as well. I started investigating her role in the scheme, tracking her communications with John, analyzing her financial records. I discovered that she was a key player, responsible for managing the offshore accounts and laundering the money. She had been living a double life, posing as my friend while secretly betraying me and helping John defraud the company. The evidence was damning, irrefutable. I knew that if I could expose her involvement, she would face serious legal consequences, including prison time. And that was exactly what I wanted. They both needed to face the consequences of their actions, to understand the depth of their betrayal, and to feel the full weight of justice. The plan was coming together, piece by piece. I had gathered the evidence, identified their weaknesses, and formulated a strategy to expose them. Now it was time to execute my plan. I decided to use their arrogance against them. They thought they were untouchable, that they could get away with anything. They underestimated my intelligence, my determination, and my capacity for revenge. I created a fake email account, posing as a potential investor who was interested in John's company. I sent him a message, praising his business acumen and expressing interest in learning more about his operations. He took the bait immediately, responding enthusiastically and inviting me to a meeting. I knew that this was my opportunity to gather more evidence, to record his conversations, and to build a stronger case against him. I purchased a miniature voice recorder, disguised as a pen, and placed it in my pocket before heading to the meeting. I dressed the part, wearing a sophisticated business suit and exuding an air of confidence. I wanted to project the image of a successful investor, someone who could potentially bring millions of dollars to his company. When I arrived at the meeting, John greeted me warmly, his eyes gleaming with greed. He launched into a presentation about his company, touting his accomplishments and promising huge returns on investment. I listened intently, asking probing questions, and subtly guiding the conversation towards the topics I wanted to explore. I managed to steer the discussion towards his financial practices, asking about his offshore accounts and his relationships with his business partners. He became increasingly nervous, his answers evasive and contradictory. I could see that he was starting to suspect something, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. I ended the meeting abruptly, thanking him for his time and promising to be in touch soon. As I left the office, I felt a surge of adrenaline, knowing that I had just gathered valuable evidence that would help me bring him down. The next step was to expose Sarah's involvement. I knew that she was actively monitoring my social media accounts, trying to gauge my state of mind and anticipate my next move. I decided to use this to my advantage. I started posting cryptic messages, hinting at my knowledge of their affair and their financial misconduct. I wanted to sow seeds of doubt and paranoia to make them question each other's loyalty. It worked like a charm. I received a frantic text message from Sarah, demanding to know what I was talking about. I played dumb, feigning innocence and expressing concern for her well-being. I suggested that she meet me for coffee so we could talk things through. She hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. I knew that this was my chance to confront her, to expose her lies, and to gather more evidence against her. I chose a public place for the meeting, a busy coffee shop where we wouldn't be able to talk freely without being overheard. I wanted to put her on edge, to make her feel vulnerable and exposed. When she arrived, she looked nervous and agitated, her eyes darting around the room. I greeted her calmly, offering her a warm smile and asking how she was doing. She launched into a carefully rehearsed speech, denying any involvement in John's schemes and expressing sympathy for my situation. I listened patiently, letting her dig herself deeper and deeper into her web of lies. Then I dropped the bomb. I confronted her with the evidence I had gathered, the emails, the text messages, the financial records. Her face paled, her eyes widened in disbelief. She tried to deny it at first, but the evidence was overwhelming. She knew that she had been caught. The silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the clatter of coffee cups and the murmur of conversations. Finally, she broke down, confessing her involvement in John's crimes and begging for my forgiveness. I stared at her, my heart filled with a mixture of anger and satisfaction. I had won. I had exposed their lies, their deceit, their betrayal. Now it was time to deliver the final blow. The recording from the pen was gold. Not only did it of John admitting to the shady dealings, but he also confessed to using company funds to pay for Sarah's lavish lifestyle. He detailed how they'd met, their initial plan to squeeze me out, and their shared glee at watching me struggle. The sheer audacity of it made the room spin. I had them, dead to rights. It was all there. But there was still one card I needed to play. I needed something undeniable, something that would not only destroy them financially but socially as well. I went back to Sarah's financials. Buried deep in the transactions, masked by layers of obfuscation, I found it. A series of payments to a private clinic in Switzerland. The memo line was coded, but I cracked it quickly. Fertility treatments, treatments that were successful. The dates lined up perfectly. Sarah had a child that John didn't know about. A child that she had kept secret from everyone. This was the nuke. This was the weapon that would shatter their carefully constructed world. I imagined the look on John's face when he found out. The utter devastation. The complete and utter destruction of their relationship. It was almost too perfect. But I couldn't just release this information blindly. I needed to control the narrative, to maximize the impact, to ensure that they suffered the most. I crafted an anonymous email. Subject line, "A little bird told me." The email contained a single photograph, Sarah beaming, holding a newborn baby. The baby had her eyes. The email was sent to John, Sarah, and the entire board of directors of John's company. I hit send and leaned back, the tremor running through my hands. Now the game has begun. I knew that John would explode. He was a volatile man, prone to fits of rage and impulsive behavior. He wouldn't be able to contain himself. He would confront Sarah publicly, and the truth would come spilling out. The board of directors would be horrified. Their golden boy, their star performer, exposed as a liar, a cheat, and a cuckold. It was a masterpiece of manipulation, a carefully orchestrated symphony of destruction. But I wasn't done yet. I still needed to ensure that they faced legal consequences for their actions. I compiled all of the evidence I had gathered. The recordings, the emails, the financial records, the photograph of Sarah's baby. I packaged it all together and sent it to the Securities and Exchange Commission, along with a detailed report outlining John's financial crimes and Sarah's complicity. I also contacted a local news reporter, someone known for their investigative journalism and their willingness to take on powerful figures. I gave them a tip, suggesting that they look into John's company and his financial dealings. I knew that they would dig, that they would uncover the truth, and that they would expose it to the world. I was setting a trap, a carefully constructed snare that they couldn't possibly escape. They were walking blindly into it, unaware of the danger that awaited them. The anticipation was almost unbearable. I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins, the thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of knowing that justice was about to be served. I watched the news closely, waiting for the story to break. It didn't take long. A few days later, the reporter published an article detailing John's financial crimes and Sarah's involvement. The article included excerpts from the emails, the recordings, and the financial records. It was a devastating exposé, a damning indictment of their behavior. The stock price of John's company plummeted. The board of directors launched an internal investigation. John was suspended pending the outcome of the investigation. Sarah was fired. The SEC announced that it was launching a formal investigation into John's financial dealings. The authorities were closing in. I turned off the television, a grim smile playing on my lips. The first phase of my plan was complete. They had been exposed, humiliated, and financially ruined. But the real fun was just about to begin. That evening, I received a frantic phone call from John. His voice was slurred, his words barely coherent. He accused me of everything, of ruining his life, of destroying his career, of taking everything from him. I listened patiently, letting him vent his anger and frustration. When he was finally done, I spoke calmly, my voice ice cold. You took everything from me, I said. Now it's my turn. I hung up the phone, severing the last connection between us. I knew that he was spiraling out of control, that he was on the verge of collapse. I wanted him to suffer, to feel the same pain and despair that he had inflicted on me, but I also wanted him to face justice, to be held accountable for his crimes. I knew that the authorities would eventually catch up with him, that he would be arrested and prosecuted. But I wanted to make sure that he suffered even more before that happened. I had one final act of revenge to unleash, one last twist of the knife. The next morning, I received a text message from an unknown number. It was a single word, help. I knew instantly that it was from Sarah. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. I responded, asking her where she was. She sent me an address, a secluded cabin in the woods. I knew that it was a trap, that she was planning something. But I didn't care. I was too far gone, too consumed by my desire for revenge. I drove to the cabin, my heart pounding in my chest. I parked the car a short distance away and approached the cabin on foot, my senses on high alert. I could hear voices inside, John's and Sarah's, arguing. I crept closer to the window and peered inside. What I saw made my blood run cold. John was standing over Sarah, his face contorted with rage. He was holding a weapon. A shiny metal weapon. The air crackled with tension. This was it, the final act, the moment of truth. I took a deep breath and prepared to intervene, to deliver the final blow. But then, something unexpected happened. Something that would change everything. The scene inside the cabin was frozen in time. John, wild-eyed and desperate, held the weapon aloft. Sarah cowered, tears streaming down her face. The air was thick with fear and betrayal. But it wasn't Sarah I saw. I saw myself broken and humiliated months earlier. The memory ignited a fire within me, a cold, calculated rage. I kicked the door in, the wood splintering with the force of my blow. John whirled around, surprise and then recognition flashing across his face. You. He screamed, his voice cracking. You did this. He lunged towards me, the weapon glinting in the dim light, but I was ready. I dodged his attack, grabbed his wrist, and twisted. The weapon clattered to the floor. He cried out in pain, clutching his arm. Sarah scrambled away, her eyes wide with terror. Get out of here, Sarah, I said, my voice low and dangerous. This doesn't concern you. She didn't need to be told twice. She stumbled out of the cabin, disappearing into the woods. Now it was just me and John. He glared at me, hatred burning in his eyes. I'm going to make you pay for this, he spat. You've ruined my life. I laughed, a hollow, mirthless sound. You ruined your own life, John. I just gave you a little push. We fought, it was brutal, primal. Years of resentment and betrayal fueled every blow. I was stronger, more determined. He was desperate, fueled by rage and the fear of losing everything. But in the end, I prevailed. I disarmed him again, pinned him to the ground and looked down at him, my face inches from his. It's over, John, I said. You've lost. He stared back at me, defeated, broken. The fight drained from him, leaving only a hollow shell. Then the police arrived. The sound of sirens had been growing closer, and I knew they were on their way. I stood up, stepped away from John, and waited. They burst through the door, weapons drawn. They quickly assessed the situation, cuffed John, and led him away. As they were taking him out, he looked at me one last time, his eyes filled with a mixture of hatred and despair. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The look on his face said it all. The ambulance arrived next. The paramedics checked me over, finding a few bruises and cuts, but nothing serious. You're lucky to be alive, one of them said. I just nodded. I didn't feel lucky. I felt empty. The cabin was a crime scene. Yellow tape crisscrossed the door. The weapon was bagged as evidence. The air smelled of iron scent and despair. I walked away, leaving it all behind. The fallout was swift and decisive. John was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and assault. The evidence was overwhelming, the case airtight. He tried to plead insanity, but it didn't work. He was convicted and sentenced to a long prison term. His reputation was shattered, his fortune gone. He was a pariah, shunned by everyone he had ever known. Sarah fared no better. She was charged as an accomplice to John's crimes. She tried to cooperate with the authorities, hoping to get a lighter sentence. But her involvement was too deep, her guilt too obvious. She was convicted and sentenced to prison as well. She lost everything: her job, her friends, her reputation, and her freedom. And the secret child, that became public knowledge during the trial. The scandal rocked the community. John, already reeling from his other losses, was devastated. The revelation that Sarah had kept this from him, that she had betrayed him in such a profound way, broke him completely. Their relationship, built on lies and deceit, crumbled to dust. They were both ruined, their lives in tatters. They had lost everything. I watched it all unfold from a distance, my heart filled with a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. I had achieved my revenge. I had brought them down, exposed their lies, and made them pay for their betrayal. But it didn't bring me the peace I had hoped for. The pain was still there, the scars still ran deep. But slowly, gradually, I began to heal. I started a new life, found new friends, and built a new career. I learned to forgive, not for their sake, but for my own. I moved on, leaving the past behind. I had faced the darkness, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I had survived. They lost everything, I just smiled. Revenge isn't sweet, it's necessary. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.